Good day, viewers. Welcome back to the Preaching Humanist with David Oliverio. That is I. Why I am not a Christian. This is part one. And this is something that Christians always ask me. David, why aren't you a Christian? Well, part one is very simple. I had some Christians approach me not long ago, and a lady walked up to me, and I was out there doing our activism with my atheist t-shirt on and secular humanism good without God. And she said, "Sir, I have one question for you. Why aren't you a Christian?" And I replied to her simply, I've got two reasons, part one, and then later on we'll come back with a part two. W.K. Clifford once said, "It is wrong always, everywhere, and for anyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence." Number one reason I am not a Christian or a believer in anything supernatural is simply because there is no evidence. A smart guy once said, David Hume, one of my favorite philosophers of all time, "A wise person proportions and adjusts their beliefs to..." What have we heard for years, the last 2,000 years? We adjust and proportion our beliefs to faith. No, not faith. We adjust and proportion our beliefs to the evidence. Evidence must precede the acceptance of an idea. It makes no sense to go out and grab an idea that makes you feel good, to grab a philosophy that makes you feel comforted and makes you feel happy without any evidence. That's not how reality works. Actually, evidence must precede the acceptance of an idea. We first test things, find out it to be true, and then we incorporate and accept a particular idea. Not long ago, I had a conversation with a woman about my age, an older woman, and she was telling me she has evidence for God, and I love to hear these stories. And she told me of her friend who was on a Baptist missionary trip. Don't know why I run into Baptists all the time. I'm like a magnet for Baptists, but I kind of like talking to them. It's fun. So she said, "David, my friend went on a missionary trip to East Africa. It was either Kenya or, not Kenya, I'm sorry. It was West Africa, Congo or Nigeria." And she said her friend told her that she had to walk with her missionary group from village to village through the jungles of West Africa. And as she walked through there, she noticed she had an insect bite on her arm. It was a large lump on her forearm. So the story goes on that she kept scratching her arm, the insect bite, and this insect bite opened up. And guess what came out of the wound? Thousands of baby insects swarming all over her arm, all over her body. Now, this woman was telling me this story, relaying this story that her friend told her, and I had to face palm, and she looked at me and she said, "David, you don't believe me." I said, "No, I have this thing called critical thinking, this BS alert, this red light flashing of skepticism. No, I don't believe this. It doesn't sound right." And I asked her, I said, "Did you not once ask your friend how she know this is true? And were you not a bit skeptical when you heard this story?" There's a lot of infantile credulity out there. Many people continue to believe this way. If they hear a story, they don't ask questions to make sure it's true. So we've got to look for truth and evidence. Another story here for you. This is a good one. This was at the Alamo about a month ago. A young man and his girlfriend approached me, and they said they had evidence for God. Another story with anecdotal evidence, they say. I love to hear these claims, these supernatural claims. Young man just got out of college. He was a college graduate, very intelligent, about 22 years old. He told me the same thing, very similar to this other story. A friend of his from Cleveland, Ohio, went home for the Christmas break, up home in Cleveland, and he was at his parents' house. He was having doubts of the existence of God, because he went off to college and he was taking philosophy and science classes. Isn't that what happens often? And I'm so glad that people start to think and they learn how to think when they go off to colleges. So he relayed this message to this young man, and his friend told him that he was up praying in his parents' home, asking God to reveal to him that he is true and real, because this young man was having doubts in the existence of God. And then he had a vision, a dream. And God spoke to him and said that he was going to prove to him that God existed. So this young man's story is, here it is. He started to smell what smelled like sulfur from the basement of their home. Now, this is up north in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, back in the 50s when I was a little boy, and I remember up north they have basements or cement cellars, what they called them up north. And this young man's story went on. As he was praying, the Lord told him to go down to the basement. He heard scratching noises in the basement and smelled sulfur. He went down to the basement. He looked down on the floor, and there was a large rug on the basement floor. And he's noticed smoke coming up from the rug. And he smelled sulfur. And the story goes on that this young man pulled the rug up from the floor, and thousands, maybe hundreds, I don't remember, of serpents and snakes came out of the floor, and there were flames and smoke coming from the floor. And I did this to this young man, and he stopped, and he said, "You don't believe me?" I said, "No, I don't believe you." I said, "Why didn't you ask your friend how he knows this is true?" This is called infantile credulity. He was a little bit upset at me that I did not believe this claim. I hear this often. Number one, why am I not a Christian? Well, the main thing is there is no evidence in the history of the world, using science, using technology. Never has there ever been any evidence, any quantitative data, any empirical evidence of anything above and beyond the natural world, of anything supernatural. Why is that? Because these supernatural belief systems, as Christianity, Islam, all the religions, and even New Age spiritualism, all the supernaturalism, these are simple concepts. These are simple ideas in the minds of individuals because they can't demonstrate it outside of their mind. Question I like to ask believers, and some of you have heard this before, and you've read this before. I love this analogy. Would you believe me if I told you I have a pet fire-breathing dragon in my apartment? Christine and I live in a little cozy one-bedroom apartment in South Austin, and in our back bedroom, we have a pet dragon. Would you believe me? Now, most people, you should say no. I would say, sure, I believe you if you can give me some evidence, right? So a skeptic would say, I would believe you if you have some evidence. Can I come over to your apartment and may I see your pet dragon in your apartment? Well, no, you can't come see it because my pet dragon is, you betcha, he's invisible, but he's real. He talks to me every day. He's my bestest friend in the whole wide world. He comforts me. He gives me hope. He tells me I'm going to live forever and go to a happy place. And it makes me feel good and comforted. Well, a skeptic would say to this claim, well, since he's invisible, how about if I bring over a box of cooking flour, white cooking flour, put it on the floor of your bedroom in your apartment, and maybe I can see the footprints of this fire-breathing, invisible dragon. And the person making the claim, no, you can't do that because my pet fire-breathing dragon hovers in the air. He doesn't put his feet on the ground. Well, one more try. How about this? How about, since you say he's a fire-breathing, invisible dragon who hovers in the air and makes you feel good, you talk to him and he's invisible and he's real, you say. Can I use a heat sensory device from work and bring it over and kind of pick up this fire from his mouth? You say he breathes fire. No, that doesn't work. This is a simple concept. Number one reason why I am not a Christian. There is no evidence for anything supernatural. And I'm open. No one can demonstrate it. I give this to Christians and believers all the time. You got to demonstrate it, and people can't. So stay tuned for part 2 because I think it's more valuable and even more important and stronger than point number 1. Stay tuned for part 2. Have a wonderful day.